Everybody. It is March 29th. It's 5:25. It's March 29th, 2021 in the year of the Lord. It's Holy Monday as we prepare for Easter. There was a couple things on the news today that I want to kind of put together for you. One was I hate to see the CDC, who's a colonel, cry, but she seems very worried. Now, last week, Peter Navarro explained to us that this Brazilian strain, yes, the Brazilian strain of the CCP Wuhan virus, could be more dangerous than the Wuhan virus. It attacks younger people. It's more contagious, if you could believe that, and it could be deadlier. It appears it may not be people that are getting it again. People that have the Wuhan virus are getting it again. That means the vaccines won't work against this. And that is why she's crying. She shouldn't cry. She should be more optimistic. Boy, do you miss President Trump? I do. Let's be positive about this. Let's deal with what we have. Let's not, woe is now, and the sky is falling and we're doomed. And believe me, if you face the reality that it came from China, let's fight China about it. But let's get the CDC back in action. Let's get warp speed going again, and we'll deal with this. Second, but that is very dangerous. Now, the second thing that came across the news today was that Peter Navarro broke is that we know gain of function research was happening in the Wuhan lab. We know that President Obama in 2014 stopped gain of function research, and this gain of function research, they say, started under Trump again. But we found out today from Mark Meadows and Peter Navarro that was never brought to President Trump's attention. He did not reappropriate those funds. So how did they get funded? How did that happen? I took it on myself to call the FBI. I was on hold for about an hour. And I explained this. This is the only people that could ever investigate this would be the FBI to find out how these funds were misappropriated. I wouldn't trust Congress to do it. They're so partisan. You wouldn't hear about it. It just wouldn't happen. So I made that phone call. I will call my representative, Michelle Steele, shortly or tomorrow. But I think everybody else should too. Call your representative. Call the FBI. This doesn't sound right. How did it stop under Obama? President Trump didn't restart it, and it's going on. Gain of function research. You've heard it from Steve Hilton. You've heard it from Tucker, I believe, has said it before, and Stephen K. Bannon in the War Room, and Peter Navarro and Raheem are all over it. What's that new one there? I'll have to get back to you on that one. Pulse something. Pulse reporting or something. But listen, I'm going to leave you with that. We got to stay tuned on this, and you got to stay up on this. This is breaking, and it could be big. It could be small, but I think it's going to be big. The last thing I want to bring up to you today, and wow, it's tough to discuss this, but there's propaganda in our country. In 2012, the bill passed. 2013, Obama signed it, so it's tricky there. And it legalized propaganda. The Voice of America, which was always overseas, can come on into domestically. That means if you can be here domestically, people can compete with you. Therefore, it's legalized. Okay? So you couple that with the fact that any senator, any congressman, any congresswoman can go on the Capitol Hill, while they're on Capitol Hill, can lie legally. Lie to the American public on Capitol Hill. It's legal. With propaganda, and you got a recipe for disaster. Can you believe anything that the press is saying? CNN, I couldn't believe a word they say. I can't believe a word MSNBC would say. So, this propaganda has to be looked at. I believe it's the biggest problem in the United States right now. I got Mark Levin talking about it I've talked to, I haven't talked to anybody else about it, but I did talk to Mark Levin about it. He brought it up. I've left messages with someone, but we'll find out if they got that message or not. But propaganda is going to be in the news, and you're going to hear more about it. We're going to deep dive in it. I'm going to deep dive in it. I believe Stephen K. Bannon and Raheem are going to deep dive in it. It is going to be, it is the biggest problem in the country, and I think we have to address it. Okay, because the misinformation that comes out, let's take for answer, what Dr. Birx and Fauci did last night, that was outrageous. That's propaganda. State personnel on the press telling lies, giving disinformation, trying to rewrite the truth. That's propaganda. It goes with Marxism. It goes with socialism. It goes with these Soviet-style tactics that the Democrats have been using for the last 2 years, 3 years, maybe longer. I'll tell you a story about propaganda when it started. I called it something else back in the day. 1992, the election of President Bush 41 versus Bill Clinton. And I was in New York taking the train into the city every day, and I would read 5 newspapers, 3 in the morning and 2 in the afternoon, 1 during the day and 1 on the way home. And I would always have a cover, the New York Times. I wouldn't read the New York Times cover to cover, but I would go through the business section and the front page and, and skim through it. They had a phrase back then, the worst economic times since the Great Depression. If they didn't write it 4 times a day, they didn't write it at all. And they wrote it. I saw it once in a article about spring training and how free agency prices weren't accelerating like they had in years past because of worst economic times since the Great Depression. Everything was slanted. I thought slanted. But this turned out to be total propaganda because that recession was one of the shallowest recessions in history. It was the second quarter of negative growth was less than 1%. It was close to 0.3%. And then back in that day, they switched it from GNP to GDP. And if it was under GNP, it wouldn't even have been a recession. But, lest I digress, the story is about the propaganda that was coming out of that. Bill Clinton gets all the credit for the economic recovery when it was all the Fed. The recession was a growth recession that the Fed had done a couple times before by raising interest rates and then bringing them down slowly, and then raising interest rates and bringing them down slowly to run the Reagan economy and wipe out inflation. And Greenspan, Volcker, they did great work. Now, he goofed on the Greenspan goofed on that last one, maybe accidentally on purpose, to put the Democrat in. But the minute Clinton was in, interest rates started to come down and the economy started to go up again. But the point was the propaganda in the New York Times says the worst economic times since the Great Recession. Give me a break. It was a white-collar recession. A lot of people that got fired from big companies started small companies, and it exploded under Clinton because it was still a normal progression of the economy, of life. Yeah, and I'm telling you, well, not to digress, but we're going to talk more about propaganda in the future, and it's going to be on the airwaves in the future, so stay tuned. Have a great day.